Thank you very much, and good afternoon to everyone. Now, those of you that attended the plenary session this morning about the benefits of biodiversity, the economic case for biodiversity and ecosystem services, will recall that at the end, in concluding the session, we realized that private sector contribution is already significant, but needs to be further upscaled. And the issue was then, well, what kind of measures, what kind of supporting measures, what kind of tools we can apply to further promote business engagement. And here we are coming to this, to the topic of this afternoon session, where we want to specifically look at the number of what we call biodiversity finance mechanisms, namely those finance mechanisms that have, for one reason or another, as a particular interest from a private sector perspective, so that are targeted at private sector financing for biodiversity conservation. So these finance mechanisms can then play an important role in reaching the biodiversity financing targets that were just agreed last year at the international level, at the global level, at the conference of the parties to the Convention on Biological Diversity. Now, what we will do is to focus on the private sector's role and potential in reaching these the national biodiversity financing targets, including by showcasing successful cases from India. And the objective of our workshop here is also to explore the policy requirements to enhance private sector contribution to biodiversity. So what we will do is now we are going to hear 4 short introductory presentations. On 3 of them will cover biodiversity, individual specific biodiversity financing mechanisms, namely biodiversity offsets, green bonds, and payments for ecosystem services. And then we are going to hear a presentation specifically on NBSUP, the NBSUP revision process, and what type of or what kind of role the private sector can play in the implementation of the NBSUP, and associated with that, of course, the national biodiversity targets. So, without further ado, and then once we heard these 4 presentations, we are going to, we have a pretty full room, but I think we're going to try it. What we plan to do is to have 4 breakout groups on each of those topics. They will be chaired by one of the speakers and further supported by us, by our team here. And then each breakout group will look at, for approximately 30-40 minutes, into 2 questions that I will present towards the end, and Christina will then further explain the setup. Basically, we will ask you to move to one corner of the room and work in that group for 30-40 minutes. Then we will come back to plenary and hear reporting back from the breakout groups, and then conclude. That's fine? So, without further ado, let's perhaps move to the first presentation. This is by Mr. Dia Narain. She is a senior associate at the Environment Management Center, as we heard, and she will talk about the potential of biodiversity offsets in India.